Good day and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the Voice of Reason. In today's coverage of the ongoing civil war taking place inside of the former state of Ethiopia, we now continue to receive reports of foreign nations encouraging its citizens to leave the capital of Addis Ababa, also known as Finfinne, as soon as possible. We can confirm the U.S. State Department has ordered personnel to leave the country or requested personnel to leave the country. If they are not going to leave the country, they are requesting to make sure those personnel staying have adequate amounts of food and supplies and water, as things could get incredibly dicey in terms of the importation of necessities into the capital of Addis Ababa. There is also the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is now also requesting that its citizens leave the country as soon as possible, in light of the ongoing and relentless advance of the Tigrayan Defense Forces. And now, with that being said, the TDF continues to advance in a southwesterly direction from the original two front lines of cities of Desse and Kombolcha, and continue to advance, quite possibly to their next target of Debre Burhan. Inside of the capital, inside of the interworkings of government, inside of Ethiopia, there appears to be utter chaos. There is definite infighting going on and blaming occurring within the government itself between the Prosperity Party and the military forces of Ethiopia, the former military forces, the remnants of the military forces inside of Ethiopia. And we continue to see that separation occurring between the Amhara militias and what was once the fairly significant the Ethiopian National Defense Forces, which at the start of this conflict numbered quite probably around 160,000 plus personnel at one point. At the current state of readiness, we are not sure what the Ethiopian Defense Forces even looks like. Again, because of the catastrophic defeats that took place within Desse, Kombolcha, north of Desse, the defeats and the offensive that took place near Gashina, in other areas between, again, Weldia and then south. The Eastern Command, the frontal army that was in charge of the protection of Desse and Kombolcha has dissolved. Much of the combat power within the Ethiopian National Defense Forces was in fact positioned near Desse and Kombolcha. As we know, a few weeks ago we were talking about a very large-scale offensive that was going to be launched by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. In fact, many news outlets, mainstream media news outlets, reported that a very large offensive by the Ethiopian National Defense Forces was occurring, and obviously that broke down very quickly. And the Tigrayan Defense Forces then launched its counteroffensive, in which we observed the rapid collapse of the the Abiy loyalist federal forces. But again, right now we continue to hear about individuals with means inside of the capital vacating. We continue to hear about military units dissolving. The military units of the Abiy loyalists, the federal forces, continue to dissolve. We're actually now hearing reports that the TDF is making renewed advances near this area right here, Debre Zabit, Falakit, and even towards Nefis Micha, as the federal forces collapse and the Amhara regional militias kind of take over for the collapsing federal forces, the federal army, which once existed. We also continue to hear about the possible call up of former soldiers within the ENDF. Now, that doesn't seem to be going very well right now. When you have a military that is in the state of disarray that the Ethiopian National Defense Forces are, it is very, very difficult to continue with training, continue with development, continuing with force construction. That is really simply gone out the window right now, and we are not even sure if the Ethiopian National Defense Forces at this point has the capacity to train new soldiers. And what I mean by train new soldiers is not just to give a soldier a weapon, an AK-47, and send them to the front, but actually a decent training and a decent kit and equipment where he has the ability to go fight, and that does not seem to be the case at this moment. But again, I talked about earlier how the we would see the transformation, quite possibly, of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces into a Amhara centric army, and I believe we are really kind of seeing that right now. It would appear that, at least from the Amhara region standpoint, they are really focused right now on defending its power base. Obviously, that is, as you can see here on the map, between Gondar and Bahir Dar. And then obviously, not so many forces are now being deployed in the defense of the capital, Addis Ababa, by the Amhara regional militias. It would appear that they are more focused on possibly defending Gondar and Bahir Dar, as opposed in setting up defensive lines in conjunction with the federal forces that are located in between Addis Ababa and Debre Sena. I had predicted that Debre Sena, or just to the southwest of Debre Sena, could be utilized because of the terrain features, because of Debre Sena sits below, at the bottom of a plateau, and this area here, just to the southwest and west of Debre Sena, could be utilized as a fairly significant defensive positions. It's very rugged terrain. The defender would obviously hold the high ground that is just to the southwest of Debre Sena. But again, when you have the utter collapse of the Ethiopian forces, the Abiy loyalists, the federal forces, and then the Amhara regional militias are kind of doing their own thing now, it's very, very difficult to put up an active resistance against an organized fighting force, the likes of the Tigrayan Defense Forces, as they continue to advance with the support of the Oromo Liberation Army. We continue to hear, however, with that being said, there is some active resistance going on. We've heard of some assassination attempts by the certain elements of Amhara militias still located inside of Dese and Kambalcha. And then obviously there is the possibility, as the Tigrayan Defense Forces continue to move south and southwest and continue to take large urban areas, we would see some sort of minor insurgency take place, and I believe we are actively seeing that now. Is it a high-intensity insurgency, the like of which was seen in the Tigray region? No, it's not. Again, these are isolated groups of a dozen or so fighters that are attacking rear areas of the Tigrayan Defense Forces. So case in point, we saw near Kobo, where possibly a very small armed group may have infiltrated within the vicinity of Kobo, attacked a couple of places, and then fled Again, this force was probably no more than a dozen to 100 fighters, and then fled back into the hills. That is the report we're given. Now, obviously, from the Amhara regional media side of things, we were receiving reports that Kobo was taken by Amhara regional militias, and that's really just kind of a ridiculous thought process given the situation. But again, isolated insurgency operations by some of these Amhara militia groups, Fano, that are still operating in the rear areas, that kind of went to ground as the Tigrayan Defense Forces advanced, and then in their main bodies advanced past some of these cities like Edessa and Kombolcha. But again, the TDF has now have advanced well past Edessa and Kombolcha, and there seems to be this fairly progressive advance towards its main goal of Addis Ababa. I would also say continue to watch Western Tigray. We may be getting to the point where the ability of the Amhara regional militias to defend Western Tigray, as opposed to defending its main power base in Gondar and Bihar Dor, may require some of those forces in Western Tigray to be removed from Western Tigray, and that may give the Tigrayan Defense Forces the opportunity to make a fairly rapid advance into Western Tigray, depending on what we're seeing within the scope of the Eritrean army. Obviously, the Eritrean army is not occupying all of Western Tigray. Its power base is in Amhara and some other places, but this could the ongoing collapse of the federal forces, the setbacks that are happening with the Amhara regional militias. We could see some sort of operation fairly soon against Western Tigray, or the reclaiming of Western Tigray by the Tigrayan Defense Forces. But again, things are really getting chaotic. You can really see it in terms of Western nations ordering its citizenry out of the country. The big issue right now is the U.S. State Department is trying to get the Tigrayan Defense Forces to stop its advance and start negotiations. Now, the problem with that is the TDF, the Tigrayan Defense Forces, have the opportunity right now for a complete and total military victory, with quite possibly a unconditional surrender. And if you have that kind of advantage as a military force, the likelihood that you are going to start talking and stop fighting, if in fact you can make your enemy capitulate with an unconditional surrender, the likelihood of negotiations to start are fairly small. Again, that would be on the likelihood of if we were to go back during World War II, and as the Soviet forces had crossed into Germany, would suddenly stop fighting. So doubtful that is going to happen. And again, when you have that kind of advantage, when you have the complete and utter collapse of the opposing force, as the TDF right now appears to have, as it continues to progress against the Ethiopian forces, the federal forces, the likelihood that it is going to stop fighting is probably fairly remote. Then you also have the Oromo Liberation Army. As you can see on my map here, the red is the areas that the Ethiopian federal forces, the Abiy loyalists, control. The yellow is high activity of the Oromo Liberation Army. So as you can see, the OLA is definitely getting closer to Addis Ababa, and then obviously you have the main conventional advance of the Tigrayan Defense Forces now progressing well past Kamise, heading south. And again, we could see some fairly significant fighting and battles taking place near Debre Sina. That would be the most obvious strong point for any remnants of the federal forces who would hope to create some sort of defensive line against the TDF. I believe that's where it's going to be. If we see an advance past Debre Sina, and we see the TDF get on the outskirts of Debre Burhan, then things are really not looking good for the federal forces, and in all likelihood, we could then actually see that advance on the capital of Addis Ababa probably sooner rather than later. Now, if those federal forces are able to, the Abiy loyalists, any Amhara militias are able to uh, get a defensive line within the vicinity of Debrecen and hold those key terrain features that are just to the southwest and west of Debrecen and defend that plateau, then obviously that could change the situation on the ground a bit. But again, we're going to continue to watch the situation. Very, very fluid situation right now. At any point, I would say that we could possibly see the current government of the Prosperity Party start to flee the country. But again, we'll keep an eye on the situation and make new videos as we get information. I appreciate everybody watching, and I'll talk to everyone soon. Have a great day.